Good morning, everybody. It's me, Paul, reporting live from my sofa. How is everybody today? As you can see, it's still a little bit dark out there. The sun's on its way out, but it's not here yet. Now, before we get started, don't forget, check the pinned comment, check the description. We have a new Facebook group. We're doing fun stuff there. Especially this Wednesday, we'll be celebrating Halloween here at the Sofa Squad. So be sure and check out the schedule and all that stuff there, and you can join Facebook because we're going to be doing some fun stuff on there. Also, if you're listening to the podcast on Apple, don't forget to drop us a review. Let us know the kind of cases you want to hear over there and what you'd like to hear us talk about. Now, that being said, y'all, today we are talking about the Ezra Mccandless trial. I'm going to try as much as I can not to call it the Mccandless trial, because every time I see it, that's what I want to do. But I basically spent this weekend getting caught up on that. I've been doing some other stuff and I haven't been able to watch it. And so this weekend I got caught up on it, and the whole time it was one of those trials where I'm like, what am I watching? What am I watching? So without further ado, let's review. Now, the biggest thing that I want to review today is the ex-boyfriend's testimony, which I'm going to get to in just a little bit. I also want to go over just some of the stuff that we've seen, as well as the opening statements, and just kind of do some feedback here, as well as the love triangle. So remember, this case is against Ezra Mccandless. She is accused of stabbing Alexander Woodworth like 16 times in March of 2018. Now, the state alleges that, this was no accident. This was no self-defense. She killed him in the backseat of her car while they were parked along a rural road, then staged a phony crime scene all the way down to carving stuff in her arm so that she could try and claim self-defense. Now, the defense is saying, no, absolutely not. This is a case of self-defense. And, he forced himself on her. She wrestled the knife away from him and then had to kill him in self-defense. Now, she has been charged with first-degree homicide, and she's pled not guilty. So let's look at the love triangle that has caused this entire thing, because it is complicated. So we're dealing with John Hanson, Alex Woodworth, and Jason Mingle. Now, the summer of 2017, Ezra and Jason are together. November of 2017, Ezra starts hooking up with Alex. February 2018, Jason has to go do some military training for a couple of weeks. He asked his friend John to look after Ezra, and boy does he. So Ezra basically ends up hooking up with this dude the whole time, and the text messages between the two were a little bit clutch, my pearls. I mean, I was just like, oh my god, is this safe for TV? Definitely NSFW. But when Jason returns home, essentially he finds this out. He confronts her. He confronts John. Ezra alleges that this is an assault. And we're going to see that basically when she gets caught hooking up with men, she claims assault. And I've got very strong opinions about this because I cannot stand to see people do stuff like this. So that's what she does. He confronts her. Well, there ends up being an investigation, and the police do not investigate any further because they can kind of see that, look, this was not an assault. Now, let's talk about some of the opening statements real quick. So we'll start with the state. The state says that, look, this is a case about extreme anger and a twisted love story. Basically, they're saying that she killed Alex to rekindle her relationship with Jason. Now, Alex, he was a professor of philosophy, a very, cerebral type person, and essentially the state's like, we're going to show that he wasn't even trying to talk to her at any point, and the evidence will show that she's the one that sought him out. Now, the state also outlines Racy's coffee shop. I mean, I wonder what Racy's coffee shop is like right now, if it's getting all the spotlight on it in Eau Claire. This coffee shop is like the center of the drama. And if you've ever hung out at a collegiate type coffee shop, I've spent many an hour in these places, you can almost sense, I know this group, I know exactly who they are without having to talk to them, and it is what it is. It's definitely a scene, and it definitely sounds like she moved into the scene and just got into the mix and kind of just turned everything upside down. Now, again, the state in their opening, goes into the whole thing about, Jason finding out about the affairs, eventually leaving her, how she resorts to always saying that she's being victimized, and basically once he's like, well, look, okay, this has all come to light, she's gone out of the picture, whatever, that her life starts to kind of come, unwound. She has to move back in with her parents. And the state's essentially saying, look, this is somebody who, wants to be in a hip town like Eau Claire or whatever, hanging out at places like this coffee shop, and it sounds like she was probably from more of like a backwoodsy type place. So this is not going to be a good look for her. Now, they also go into how she was obsessed, and that this obsession, and love for Jason kind of starts turning into blaming Alex for her relationship. And at one point she texts Alex and is like, look, don't ever contact me again. And he's like, okay, done. I think if you've ever known anyone like this girl, Ezra Mccandless, then Ezra Mccandless, then you already know it's like, okay, thanks, I won't contact you. So that's what it sounds like to me. But, even though he doesn't do that, she's the one who seeks him out. And the state says that on the day of this incident, that she claimed that she had like a heating pad and a bookmark to return to him or something. Now, the state lays out a timeline, and I'm going to just briefly go through it here. But essentially what happens is, and we'll hear evidence from other people along the way in this, and they're also in this timeline laying out, we have her on camera here, because remember, they're trying to establish that the proof of this part, but let's just talk casually about the timeline here. So, she goes on the day of the incident, she goes to this Racey's coffee shop. She hasn't been seen for like a month. Now, Jason, the guy who she really seemingly wants to be with, is like sitting outside or something, and he sees her come in, and he will say that she had a fire in her eyes. Now, she had been talking to him still. They had never really cut off communication. And she had talked about like showing Alex and or John or both this notebook that she had, and it was about like the attacks and stuff like this, just very personal stuff. And Jason felt like, no, don't do that, don't do it. And so she shows up, she has this fire in her eye, she goes to the counter, gets coffee, pays for it, and leaves a tip, which apparently this was very rare for her. We'll learn later that she has essentially worn her welcome out of this coffee shop by getting free coffee. So, there's that. Now, she leaves, and Jason's basically like, I have a really bad feeling, and he wants to protect his friends or keep an eye on them. So he hops on his bike, and he essentially ends up going to Alex's when he figures out that John's moved somewhere or whatever. So he goes to Alex, because I guess in his world, he's like, she's going to go confront them about this notebook and stuff. So he goes to Alex's house, and he's essentially just kind of like stalking around outside, and then eventually goes in, because her car's there, the door's open, music's on, and he goes in there and confronts them, and essentially they're like, no, everything's fine, but it also seems to be a situation that they're like, yep, okay, well, bye-bye, we're working out fine here, so you can run along. My opinion is this: she planned all that out. Whatever this was of going over there and Jason following all this stuff, she seems like the type person that spends so much time figuring out how to manipulate other people that people don't see it coming, because most people don't spend this amount of time manipulating other people. So I think that she did all that. She lured Jason over there to the whole thing. That all plays into her thing of making him jealous, trying to get back with him, so on and so forth. So when Jason goes back out of the apartment, someone has actually called the police on him, because they're like, okay, who is this guy lingering around the apartment, so on and so forth. So this is going on at this time, and the police say that everybody's fine. There's no one complaining. I mean, here's your chance. This guy's going to assault me. None of this is going on. So fast forward to like 4:15 later that day. This is the next contact and that someone has with any of this stuff, and she shows up at a man's house. She's very disheveled. She has like dry blood on her. I think she's just in her sock feet, and she has like scratches on her. The word boy is carved on her arm, and basically she's like, I've been attacked by an unknown person. She acts catatonic, and although she is able to say, when they ask who can we call, she says Jason Mingle. Now they take her to the hospital, and they give her an exam. Now, the state is going to be bringing people up, like the doctor from the hospital, people of this nature, to say, yeah, these are self-inflicted wounds, even the word boy on her arm. So, when she is asked during these examinations, how did this, get there? Alex did it. Now, during all of this, she has very selective memory. The last thing she kind of remembers is being in a park with Alex. She's kind of like dropping little bombs off to throw them off a little bit. But, during this, she's not saying that she was attacked. She's not saying that she stabbed him. None of this stuff. So now detectives go back to the guy's house that she showed up to, and they kind of retrace her steps, which obviously lead to this dirt road that leads to her car, that leads to Alex's body, bludgeoned to death, hanging outside of it. Clearly, they go back to re-interview her. During this, all this stuff comes out. You know, she's like, yeah, we had a consensual relationship, but it just felt wrong. And, you know, I used to go, not me, she used to go by masculine pronouns, but then she started, when she identified as like a guy, then she went back to identifying, I guess, as more feminine, but he would always continue to call her masculine pronouns. And so there was that going on. Now, during another one of these police interviews, she says that last thing she remembers is he grabbed her arm and her anxiety made her black out. She always reverts to, there's several things she reverts to and that their case hangs on, is she's assaulted by men and that the least bit of stress makes her black out. You know, or anxiety or whatever. Now, eventually the detectives confront her and they're like, look, we found your car. We found his body. We know that this story is not adding up. Now, again, during this, you know, all of a sudden it's, oh, I don't remember what happened and I don't know about the stab wounds and da-da-da-da-da-da. And, but during this, you know, at one interview, she admits that, okay, yeah, I'm the one who carved the word boy on my arm, and that she doesn't think that he was trying to attack her or assault her that day. And there's that. So basically, you know, the state in their opening is showing, like, look, this girl, you can't trust what she's saying. So they also show the knife, and that's kind of like, ooh, you know, it's a for real knife. And then they describe in detail the injuries on him. I mean, some of these injuries, y'all, I mean, I'm talking like knife through the skull type injuries, so knife to the groin type things. I mean, they are horrific. Now the defense gets up there, and y'all, I was like, oh my god, he was very dramatic and he was talking very slowly, just like this. And I was like, here we go, you know. And I mean, I get what he was doing, and I get he's doing his job. I say this every video, but it was just annoying because I'm like, just get the information out and let's go. So, but of course, they're going the opposite way of like, here's this disheveled girl. She shows up, you know, she doesn't even know what her name is, and they're trying to paint this really dark picture. And I'm like, your client has lied so many times. I'm sorry, we can't believe her. Sorry, you know, I mean, you're barking up the wrong tree here. Now, basically, the defense is saying, look, she went over there to talk to Alex to see if they could salvage a friendship, one without sex, and that somehow from there they end up going for a ride, they end up getting stuck in the mud, and he ends up assaulting her in the back seat. He blindfolds her, takes a knife, cuts her clothes off, and the defense is basically like, you know, we're going to show this evidence, but also show evidence about how trauma affects people and how this is going to account for the amnesia that comes to the actual crime. And now we're going to see different witnesses come up that, you know, just make the case for the state even stronger. You know, the DNA analysis, you know, yeah, his blood, Alex's and Ezra's were, DNA was all over the place, all over that knife, all over that car, all over the clothes, everything. So, you know, they were both there. She was definitely there. She had her stuff on her DNA on the murder weapon. So did he. The whole 9 yards. Coffee shop workers get up there. Yes, you know, we hadn't seen her in forever, and now here she is all of a sudden. A very damning piece of evidence for me was the emergency room doctor, who's like, yeah, these wounds are self-inflicted on her, and they're done from the perspective of somebody who writes with their right hand, which she does. And, I mean, that right there, I'm just like, yeah, because think about these things, y'all. Do you think, and once you look at the pictures, because they do show the pictures, like of the sexual assault exam and things of this nature, I mean, these are just, they're not very deep scars. And think about it, if you're doing that to yourself, are you going to really be able to sit there and truly carve, you know, cut into your skin, boy? And if someone is assaulting you, and your claim is they grab your hand and they're carving the word boy, I mean, don't you think grabbing away like this and doing this would cause that to not be so even and superficial? So, to me, that was like major testimony. Now, her adoptive father gets up there. He seems like a very nice guy. They all seem really nice. You know, I mean, it's Wisconsin. You know what I mean? Like, they're all really nice. And he basically has a tree cutting business, and yes, she's used knives before. He's given her knives very similar to the murder weapon, you know, to be like, hey, if you get in a car wreck, you know, bang the window out or cut your seatbelt off or whatever you need to do. And he stands by her. He loves her. He makes her like a real person, which will be beneficial to the defense. defense. Again, the medical examiner gets up there. They go over all the injuries to Alex. It's brutal. The photos from the sexual assault definitely add up to being the superficial scratches on her. Friends get up there to testify, and from the friends' testimony, I'm kind of like, okay, this to me is what this sounded like. First of all, again, it's a very tight clique at this coffee shop. Everyone's kind of dating each other and sleeping with this one and that one and da-da-da-da-da. So Alex is kind of like talking in terms of, oh, I'm hooking up with someone and he's really into it, but he's not putting them out there. So it's almost like somebody who's like, oh yeah, I'm really, I've found a good one, but they're not going to say, it's that person over there. So it's like being respectful, if you will. So, but from that, you can see that, okay, this is a very intertwined little scene going on here. But also from that is you kind of gather that Alex doesn't seem like the type of guy that was going to be stalking this girl at all. Now, even one of the officers got up there and he was like, yeah, she seemed like she was trying to like be upset more than she actually was. Now, the biggest testimony of the day, of the trial so far for me or whatever, short of her getting up there, is Jason Mangles, the ex-boyfriend. So first of all, he loves being up there on stage. For him, I think it is the stage, on the stand. And at first I was like, okay, this is great because he's very comfortable and he's very, easygoing, wants to answer questions before they're fully asked, wants to finish his defense and states quite, sentences. And I think by the end of it, it was like, okay, dude, just, answer the questions, yes or no. You're making this more complicated. And I wasn't sure if I authentically believed a lot of the stuff that he said at the end. I think he still has feelings for her. And let's talk about her feelings for him. When he comes out, first of all, she is all made up this day. Her hair's all fluffy. Her makeup's on fleek. The whole 9 yards, cute outfit. She is so smitten with him and and giggly with him and hanging on to his every word and, controlled breathing. I mean, it's everything that State said of her being an obsessive stalkery type. I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of surprised that the attorneys didn't say, you can't look at him like that. You can't be giggling and when he says stuff. Like, it's bad looking. It does not make you look stable at all. And I just wasn't quite sure what to really think of him after he started talking. So he gets up there, and he's testifying to, they had this relationship. And, at one point she got pregnant. At this point, he doesn't know whose kid it was, but then he assumed it was his. She had an abortion, and this is like a really emotional, thing for him or whatever. And so they didn't really sleep together after that. He would sleep downstairs on the sofa. She would sleep in the bed. And so you kind of get this, like, again, it's this very cerebral, in our heads, deep thinking type people, which I can respect that. But you can see where that might get a little out of hand with something like this, with this much drama going on. So he also goes into describing the scene at Racy's and giving us some insights into her behavior. And so, for example, he talks about the Dungeons and Dragons night. Now, he starts talking about this, and I'm like, they still play that game? And I am, like, actually impressed because I'm like, okay, cool. So it's nice to see that computers haven't completely taken over things. But Dungeons and Dragons, I mean, I played that when I was in middle school. So it's been a long time. So he's saying that Monday nights are Dungeons and Dragons nights. And the state was like, could you briefly describe what that is? And so I was like, oh my God. I was like, we're going to be out here for 30 minutes. I was like, please just say a role-playing game. Please just say a role-playing game. But he describes for the jury what it is in a very, roundabout way. And then he goes into saying how, he tried to include her. He sounds like a really good guy on that level because it sounds like he realized, that she was an odd person out. And I think he might have been blinded to some things because I think other people saw, like, this, something's not right with this chick. You know what I mean? Like, she's bad news. And he was giving her way more benefit of a doubt, but he had an intimate relationship too. And, he's like, at this point, he's 35, she's 22, so there's a big age gap there. But he was like, she didn't really want to come hang out on Monday nights, but she also didn't want me to. And so she would, like, threaten self-harm a lot of times. And that kind of manipulative behavior right there, again, it's all just very telling of the type of person that she is or was. Now, he goes into the details about how, yes, when he was away on military training, he comes back. Well, during that time, he's like, she texts him and said, I have to move out, and does so. And then he comes back and she's like this back and forth situation. So he was helping pay for a hotel room, and he would stay with her the nights that she would come into town and stay at this hotel. That's where he found these text messages. And between her and John. And, he talks about confronting John, and that John denied it until receipts were proven. And I'm like, I'm sitting here thinking, are you still friends with this guy? Because this guy does not sound like a good friend at all. And, the fact that this girl was able to come in and just, destroy all these friendships and obviously kill Alex just shocks me. But again, he goes into this excuse she gave as to how she was assaulted twice by John. And one was the evening of, I guess she was at his place and drinking with the boys, and he took her upstairs, and she thought he was putting her to bed because she was so drunk, but he ended up assaulting her. So then the next morning when he brought her back home, which, remember, she was living with Jason, he was like, I need to use the bathroom, and then he came in and assaulted her again in their bed. So I'm guessing there's way more to that story. And I'm guessing one of the reasons why she had to leave the apartment, because it doesn't sound like the roommates liked her, is they probably caught her sleeping with somebody, and they probably caught her cheating. And it sounds like Jason's protecting her, maybe, or I don't know. The defense gets up there and questions him, and it's kind of exhausting, to be honest. There are literally so many sustained objections against the defense. He slips at one point and says how she wore her welcome out with the baristas at Racy's. The defense brings up the police being called on him. She says apparently they've been called on him a couple of times. So this picture begins to get painted of Jason himself, which, he's not on trial here. But obviously he's a big character, eyewitness type person. You start to get this picture of there's something not all there. His testimony isn't making sense. Some of it's just, it sounds like he's leaving chunks out, like he's protecting her, like he's under some spell of her still. I don't know. It was very bizarre to me. So I just didn't get a real authentic sense off of his testimony. So that's it. This video is getting longer. I just wanted to go recap everything. Again, I haven't been watching this one, so this weekend I just went and got caught up and everything, and I was like, oh my God. I can't believe I've had to miss this one. I am dying for her to take the stand, and I will be totally making a video on that, because it's going to be good. It's going to be good. So anyways, that's it. Thank you for hanging out with me. Don't forget to check that description in the pinned comment. Join our Facebook group. Come hang out Wednesday night. Drop us a review on Apple. Let me know the cases you want to hear about. And y'all have a great Sofa Squad day, and I'll talk to you soon.